right, welcome back to round 3 of Modern at the Game Grid Championship, the Spring Championship. So here we have Jeremy, and it looks like he's playing something with Watery Grave against Nicholas, who's on burn. We've already got him labeled correctly. So it looks like that's an Inquisition of Kozilek from Jeremy.
Likely means that Jeremy's on Death Shadow, would be my guess, based on
makes a
that.
lot of sense.
Based on that opening.
That was a fetch shot for
Yep.
Jeremy to start off.
Yep, dropping to 17.
That shot can disruption is tale as old as time. Looks like Nicholas got interesting hand here. There's a Lava Spike. He's got a Boros Charm and a Lightning Helix. I think I might have seen a Skewer the Critics. That might be a Goblin Guide and the underneath everything. And it looks like he's got a one-lander.
Yep.
It's a Lightning Bolt.
Yep. So pretty much everything Nicholas wants. So Jeremy's taking the Lightning Bolt, pretty much the best one mana burn spell, which would indicate to me that Jeremy likely has a Fatal Push.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if he had a Goblin Guide, but he drew one, so.
Yeah, and in fact, Jeremy did even reveal the Fatal Push off the top of his deck. So that makes sense in the context of basically you want to make sure you're minimizing the amount of damage you have, and using your removal as a way to remove their creatures is a pretty good way to do that.
Right, if you use your hand disruption to kill creatures, then what's your removal spells doing? So that was an attack from the Goblin Guide. Bringing Jeremy down to 15, which it's always interesting with Shadow whether you're happy to chip in for 2 or not.
Yeah, and Jeremy is just passing here, basically. Getting that free card draw off the Goblin Guide. Nicholas could have not attacked with the Goblin Guide. There's a line he could have taken where he could have just waited and just left the Goblin Guide untapped. Jeremy would still Fatal Push it most likely at the end of turn, but then that way you're not giving him an extra card, basically.
Makes a lot of sense. Card advantage is big, even in something like Burn, where it's running quickly, as Drew said earlier. Burn just wants a certain amount of resources, and if its opponent can keep up with those resources, they're in a better position to fight off. Nicholas followed up after that attack step with a Lava Spike and a Skewer the Critics, kind of a 1-2 punch.
Yep. And Nicholas does have basically, I think, 10 points of burn. I believe he's got a Charm, a Lightning Helix, and another, I think that's another Lava Spike in his hand. And Jeremy's already at 9, now 8 from the
Fetch land?
Yeah, from the fetch land.
So it's going to be a tight spot because this is where Shadow gets powerful, but this is also where Burn likes to be. Turn 3 with a...
Yeah, and it looks like Jeremy just has, I think he has a Gurmag Angler in his hand, and I don't see a Death Shadow.
Yeah, he did preserve his life total, which makes sense against Burn, but also might mean that there is no Shadow coming soon.
Yeah, and he's falling to 7 here.
Be surprised if he's shocked.
Yeah, he's probably just going to get a basic, I'm assuming. Looks like he's still looking. Yeah, there we go. Getting a basic island.
Okay, we'll see what he plays. Probably that Gurmag Angler.
He does have a Snapcaster, so another option he has is he can go Snapcaster, flashback the Inquisition.
Still that Boros Charm.
He's going to go for a Thought Teeth here, which puts him at a precarious 5 life. That's kind of a, once you're at 6 or lower life, that's a pretty good spot for the burn deck, because it now means that basically any 2 burn spells are lethal.
Yeah, it looks like he needed to get another card in the graveyard, or otherwise he would just tap out for his Gurmag Angler. No, he had some space.
He's still tapping out, leaving the Inquisition for a potential Snapcaster flashback.
What he really would like is a Stubborn Denial here to protect him.
Yeah. if I was Nicholas there, I would have actually just cast the Lightning Helix. I don't know if Nicholas is at 20 or 18. I didn't catch if he's shocked from the Sacred Foundry. If he did, then what casting the Lightning Helix does is it puts him at 21, which means it would actually take him. It would take Jeremy 5 turns to kill him with the Gurmag Angler instead of 4.
So it looks like in response to the Inquisition, he can cast Lightning Helix.
Yep, which puts Jeremy to 2. And then I believe Nicholas is at 16.
After the attack from the Gurmag Angler.
Yep. And then 19 from the... So he just top decked a land, so he played the Eidolon.
Eidolon's pretty strong because it almost locks Jeremy out of casting any
Yeah,
more spells.
but he is at 6 though, so now Nicholas pretty much has to draw a burn spell. Cracking the fetch there is interesting because that turns off Searing Blaze as a top deck out.
That is, yeah. And it's not like he needs the 4th land, right?
Yeah, and thinning your deck doesn't really matter. It's like, I think it like increases the chance of you drawing a non-land by like, I think it's like less than 2% or something like that. So you'd much rather just have Searing Blaze as
And
a
there's a
life
Searing
draw.
Blaze. You called it.
Yep.
So Jeremy... Looks like Jeremy was at 2, but Nicholas thought he might have been at 1, or maybe he was just showing the hand.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one actually. If you want to go check and just verify who won that one.
Yeah, I can do that. So yeah, we confirmed Jeremy won that one. Nicholas wasn't able to finish off with the Searing Blaze for 1, leaving Jeremy at 1. And follow-up attack from the Gurmag Angler.
Another was Jeremy at 2,
Jeremy was at 2, yeah.
and he only had the Snapcaster to block. He could have Nicholas could have Searing Blaze the Snapcaster and attacked.
And he was at 6, right?
I believe he was at 6.
So an unfortunate series of maybe misplays for Nicholas, possibly costing that game, but who really knows?
Yeah, so here I'm not super familiar with Death Shadow sideboarding options. If he has more Stubborn Denials in his sideboard, he's going to want to bring those in. He's going to want to board out like his Thought Seizes. He's going to be taking plenty of damage, so he doesn't need to worry about hurting himself in the matchup in order to get his Death Shadows online. Yeah, you can even see like he's boarding out like Street Race. Basically, cards that like deal damage to him that just kind of do incidental things, and probably in lieu of interactive cards that aren't going to like hurt him. Nicholas, if he has any number of Path to Exiles, is probably going to want to board those in, just as a way to deal with like a Death Shadow or a Gurmag Angler. I don't think there's too much more you really want to board in. You don't want to board in Rest in Peace in this matchup. It's going to be too low impact, and you're worried about basically your hand being stripped apart, so you don't want to like be drawing a Rest in Peace when you desperately need like a burn spell.
Yeah, it's a battle of efficiency here. Both decks seem to do it a lot. Grixis Death Shadow, people like to call the Legacy Modern deck because it gets to be so efficient.
Yeah, it plays lots of cheap spells, cheap interactive spells, the discard spells, coupled with really basically one mana large threats.
Yeah, that makes it hard to interact with when your 1-drop threats are 5/5s or bigger, and and Lightning Bolt is a staple of the format.
Yeah. So it looks like Jeremy did leave Thoughtseize in. He maybe just didn't have enough stuff to bring in, so he may have left some number of the card in.
Theoretically, Thoughtseize can save you life if you take something that deals more than 2 damage, and you gain theoretically a little bit of life, but it's always a risky play.
Yeah, because when usually you're pretty happy if your opponent Thoughtseizes you and you're the burn player, because you're trading cards still, but you're still like dealing damage out of the deal.
Yeah. Unlike a counter spell like a Stubborn Denial that would just turn off the damage from that card.
Yeah, like Inquisition is really good against burn. Thoughtseize not quite as much.
Well, Jeremy mulliganed, and we're looking at an Inquisition. I think he might have a Jace Vryn's Prodigy in his hand as well.
Yeah, I think there's some Death Shadow decks that play Jace.
Yeah. So there's a Scry at the bottom from Jeremy. It looks like we're ready to play. Nicholas on the play, and I think he kept 7.
And I believe that's a Swiss Spear.
I thought so too. Getting in for 1.
Yeah, and you can see from Nicholas's deck, he does have Path to Exile in.
And Rest in Peace.
And he does have a Rest in Peace as well. Rest in Peace can be good versus some of Jeremy draws. It's just awkward because, like, if you Rest in Peace and they just have the double Death Shadow draw, you're just like, the card literally doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
But if Jeremy just has like Gurmag Anglers, then it's obviously going to be like really good.
I know that because Death Shadow is so much better with a threat versus not, a lot of people have been adding extra Gurmag Anglers into their deck, maybe even up to the full 4.
Sure.
And so if you can catch your opponent on that, it definitely makes a lot of impact on the board, but definitely can fall flat also. We'll see with this Inquisition what Jeremy decides to take, and that will kind of tell us what his game plan is. I see a Lava Spike, a Skewer the Critics, there's the Rest in Peace and the land. And I can't make out, is that Path to Exile at the top?
No, I think it's a...
Well, he took it. It's another Lava Spike.
Yep, another Lava Spike.
Well, the Swift Spear is going to be able to get in for a fair amount of damage. Lava Spike turning on Spectacle for the Skewer the Critics, if Nicholas is so inclined. It looks like he is. So that's a total of 9 damage going at the Death Shadow player. So now we'll see if there's a Death Shadow to capitalize on that, or Nicholas is out of cards, and we can kind of see that that Rest in Peace is not very exciting in his hand.
Yeah, and basically like if it might still be relevant here this game because I think Jeremy does have a Gurmag Angler, and I don't think he can play it this turn.
And you know what Rest in Peace also fights against? Is Jace Vryn's Prodigy.
It does. Yeah, basically at that point, Jace would just end up being a...
Merfolk Looter.
Yep.
Every time I'm playing against Burn and I fetch down to a multiple of 3, I feel a little scared.
Yep, 9 and 6 are kind of the sweet numbers to be at.
There's a Serum Visions. He's trying to find something. That's a pretty smart move he did, is fetching before playing the Serum Visions, so that if he knew he was going to fetch, he doesn't negatively affect his scry and lose value on his Serum Visions. And Nicholas drew a Deflecting Ball.
Yeah, Deflecting Palm is possibly decent in this matchup. The one thing about Deflecting Palm versus Death Shadow is that you are concerned about like them having a discard spell for it.
It's definitely fun to get your opponent though.
It is, yeah. Like if you Deflecting Palm like a really big like Death Shadow. That definitely feels really good when you do manage to do that.
Nicholas dropped down a Goblin Guide and now gets to attack for a little extra. Jace gets to block for free. I guess not totally for free because of prowess.
Yeah, which Nicholas is not planning on creatures, so the Sorcerer is still a 1/2.
The Deflecting Palm, one time I attacked my opponent with an Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn.
Okay.
My opponent tapped all his mana, sacrificed all his lands, and then played Deflecting Palm and killed me for perfectly 15 damage. Mishra's Bauble is a popular choice now for Shadow decks. It looks like Jeremy's trying to figure out what to do. Use Jace to get a card deeper.
Yeah, discards a Gurmag Angler that he basically can't play this game.
Death Shadow.
Yeah, it does have a Death Shadow.
So interesting to see that Rest in Peace stopped the Gurmag Angler, but the Death Shadow is still free to come on down as an 8/8.
He's using Deflecting Palm, it looks like before combat here.
It's an interesting choice. Is that just showing that he has the win?
And then he's using Path to Exile. Yeah, so basically what he's doing is he's pumping the Swift Spear to 3 power here.
Maximizing his spell count.
Yep.
Makes a lot of sense. He does have to worry about Stubborn Denial. Always a
Yeah,
threat.
well, or even like a removal spell, like a Fatal Push here, means that this is not a lethal attack. He does have a Stubborn Denial.
So is this interesting? Because it looks like the Deflecting Palm resolved.
Yeah, the Deflecting Palm did resolve, but the Path did not.
It looks like they're talking math. It looks like Jeremy might have misunderstood what Deflecting Palm did. It prevents the next time a source will deal damage,
Yep.
and then that damage is dealt by Deflecting Palm to the controller of the original source.
Yeah, and they're getting a judge just to clear out the interaction.
Pull up that card to make sure on how it reads. We're waiting for clarification.
Yeah, I believe the Deflecting Palm is the damage to the only prevents damage to like the player, if I remember correctly.
Let's see what it says here. Deflecting Palm, red, white, instant. The next time a source of your choice would deal damage to you this turn, prevent that damage. If damage is prevented this way, Deflecting Palm deals that much damage to that source's control.
Yep. So basically, yeah. So the Goblin Guide's still going to die because the damage is only prevented to Nicholas.
All right, we'll see if Jeremy can come back now. He has to walk the thin line of defending against the creature and the top of Nicholas's deck, while also killing him before he has time to draw that final burn spell. Is that a Dismember he drew off the Jace?
Yeah, which he can cast for the full amount. Just pay 3 mana.
So now he's attacking for 11 and hoping that Nicholas doesn't draw a burn spell.
Yeah, so he pays the full 3 mana, getting rid of the Swift Spear.
What was that he played?
I believe it was a Skewer the Critics or a Rift Bolt. He could tap 3 mana, so probably one of those 2 burn spells.
Makes a lot of sense. How do you feel as a burn player of Skewer the Critics versus Rift Bolt? I feel like they compete a little for each other's space.
You're basically playing both. The Rift Bolt, I think, is I think it's a little underrated. You surprisingly as a burn player, you don't have too many spells that actually interact with creatures, and Rift Bolt is one of them that does. It's delayed, obviously, usually, but like you can do things like like Riftbolt makes like killing like Thalia, for example, easier. You still end up paying 2 mana total, but the 2 mana is over 2 turns rather than having to pay 2 mana up front. So I think Riftbolt gets a little bit underrated in Burn. It's still like one of your strong cards because it's still a bolt, and I still think you just end up playing Skewer the Critics.
All 12.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of the lists have been doing is that they still just play. They basically cut Skull Cracks for Skewer the Critics to increase the number of 1 mana bolts that you have in the deck.
Trade a 2 mana Lava Spike in most matchups for a 1 mana Lightning Bolt. So it does look like Nicholas won that one, and we've gone to sideboards. He's shuffling up for game 3. I assume Jeremy will be on the play. It's always interesting with Burn. You just have to ask, do you draw the last Burn spell or not?
Yeah, and that happens a lot with the deck. There's a lot of games where you have to put yourself in a position where you're like, okay, I'm going to be out of cards. My opponent's going to be at 3 life. And you sometimes you are just navigating a game to get to that spot, and then just hope that the top of the deck is kind to you.
It's Magic. It's a game of variance, and leads to a lot of fun moments and a lot of disappointing moments.
Yep, absolutely.
In round 1, I saw a player who drew the last Lightning Bolt he needed to have 3 spells to bolt his opponent twice from 12 to 9 to 6, bring back 2 Arclight Phoenixes, and attack for lethal off the top of the library.
Looks like Jeremy's mulliganing it again.
Nicholas might be keeping.
Yeah, I see a couple lands. I think he's keeping, it looks like.
So how many lands in your hand before you start questioning as the Burn player whether you should mulligan?
3. The question is, if I have a 3-land hand, what other 4 spells do I have? If I have Goblin Guide and 2 burn spells and an Eidolon, I'll probably keep that hand. If it's just 4 burn spells, I'll mulligan immediately. I think once you have 4 lands, you pretty much are mulliganing all of those hands.
A lot of people say that Burn is just, did they draw their 4th land, then they win or lose on that. And so if you start with that, it just means you're more likely to draw more lands and less spells.
Yep.
Jeremy's scrying as about keeping his 6, and he's keeping to the top.
Yeah, which means he's likely not going to crack a fetch this turn.
Nicholas has done a good job at starting with a creature every game.
So Jeremy is going to go ahead and crack, meaning that the Scry potentially wasted, particularly if he did keep the card on top.
It's always tough with those fetch lands and those Scries because you want to preserve your life total as much as possible, as well as use your mana efficiently, but card selection can also matter. Looks like is he fetching that into play, tapped or untapped?
Let's see. I think
he took the damage, so I don't think he has a fatal play.
Yeah, he just put it into play tapped.
Return. I see.
He's got a Serum Visions.
Serum Visions has lost a lot of popularity recently. Though it is a powerful cantrip.
Jeremy just considering his options here. I think he has a Gromag Angler on top, which is what I think he may be considering, is whether he wants to keep that Gromag Angler.
One to top and one to the bottom.
He did, yeah. Didn't get to see which ones went to the top and the bottom.
Play the tap tonight. And here comes the flurry of spells.
Yep, so chunking Jeremy for half of his life total here.
Turn 2.
Yep, doing 9 damage.
Tapping out against the Swiss Spear is tough.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy did mulligan, but I think he does have a Death Shadow, which is pretty much what he's going to need in this spot in order to just try and pressure Nicholas as quickly as he can.
It's the best option for the Shadow deck to kind of punish the Burn deck for playing its game.
Yep.
The most nutty draws from Grixis Death Shadow usually involve multiple Death Shadows hitting at once.
Right.
It's a Thought Scour, so maybe we will be pushing out that Gurmag Angler.
Yeah, interesting because I think Jeremy actually tapped one of his black sources.
Oh yeah. So now he can only play one other black card.
Yeah, maybe he didn't have a Death Shadow. Might have just been an Angler.
Nicholas is untapping quickly. You think he has the win?
Well, not likely if Jeremy's at 8, as 2 Boros Charms would still take 2 turns to like finish getting off. He could have like triple burn spell.
It's a Swift Spear.
Yep.
So not this turn. Looks like he has 2 lands and a Boros Charm in hand.
Yeah, and I like this attack a lot from Nicholas. You're pretty much just committing one of these Monastery Swift Spears to be a shock. And I think Nicholas just has lands in his hand, but with Jeremy at 2, then that means that he's pretty much in the spot where every burn spell is live to end the game for him.
And the Burn deck gets to play few lands so that it maximizes its chances of drawing that last burn spell.
Yeah, most lists play 19 or 20 lands.
And Jeremy still looks to be about 4 turns out. With a Shadow, maybe he can speed that clock out.
Yeah.
But he's definitely going to have to fade a few draw steps, and he does not. Let's see if there's a Stubborn Denial. Looks like there is. Buys one more turn.
Potentially more, depending on if Nicholas has misses on some draw steps.
Dropping down to 1. Jeremy's probably looking for an extra colored source here. Blood Crypt getting both black and red. So, how does the Death Shadow win from this position against Burn?
Well, the first thing is he needs to be able to start attacking with that Gurmag Angler at some point. And in fact, that's why I think he's putting the Snapcaster Mage into play. My guess is he's pretty much maximizing his mana in order to have a blocker for the Swift Spear, and then so he can start attacking with the Angler. Because if he's not pressuring Nicholas, then that just gives Nicholas more turns to draw more burn spells. So he needs to pressure Nicholas in order to close the game as quickly as Jeremy can, so that way he doesn't just lose to a top deck burn spell.
Makes a lot of sense.
Because I think he can answer another burn spell, because I think he does have a Snapcaster and for a Stubborn Denial, so he can Snapcaster for a second burn spell. But if Nicholas has running burn spells, then Jeremy will lose.
Do you think that Nicholas kept in his Scalding Tarns? Looks like this is another Skewer the Critics.
I believe it's a Rift Bolt. Either way, they're basically the same at this point. Either, it's a 3 mana.
Asking the question, are you dead?
Yep. And Jeremy does have a Snapcaster. So Nicholas can attack here. I'm not sure about that attack, mostly because he can just double block with the Snapcasters and just potentially trade both Snapcasters for a Swift Spear, leaving the board clear with just an Angler.
Still a little way off, though, and that Inquisition he just drew isn't going to help a lot.
Yeah, so now Jeremy has an interesting question, or interesting thing. I think if I was in Jeremy's spot, what I would do is I would dismember for full price on the Swift Spear, attack with 1 Snapcaster and 1 Gurmag Angler. That will put Nicholas to 7, which then means Nicholas is dead next turn if he doesn't top deck a burn spell or a creature.
Makes a lot of sense.
But you want to leave 1 Snapcaster back, because if Nicholas top decks a Swift Spear or a Goblin Guide, you don't want to just die to the attack.
Right, you want to die to an honest-to-goodness burn spell.
Yep.
he has it. If he draws a creature, he can weave it back to block the Angler by himself.
Yep.
So now it's on Jeremy to draw something.
Yeah, I think Jeremy's hand is just an Inquisition, which is essentially just a dead card at this point with both players top decking.
He draws a removal spell, he wins, maybe a Temur Battle Rage. Looks like it might have been.
Yeah, not sure what that other card in his hand is, other than the Inquisition.
It doesn't look like it's a removal spell because he knows that Nicholas is empty-handed.
Alright, so he's attacking with everything. This forces Nicholas to block. It's probably another creature. Yeah, that makes sense. Basically another creature, which allows him to attack with everything. And that looks like a Lightning Helix off the top.
There you go, that's game. Burn doing what Burn does.
That was a really good last game. It was really close. I think Jeremy played it pretty well. Just basically, Nicholas was able to top deck 3 burn spells to get him in a position to win that game.
Yeah, definitely a lot of interesting combat decisions were made. I agree with you. I liked that sacrifice of the Monastery Swift Spirit to get Jeremy down to 2,
Yep.
which actually won the game at the end of the day.
Yeah, so that was round 3 that we just finished up there. We should have round 4 happening shortly. So we'll be back for that, and then it'll be standard after the 4th round of Modern.